Don't Give Up Your Day Job, a local musician's guide. By me, Paul Gillings. An educational and sometimes humorous look at what it's like to be part of the local music scene. One of the absolute essentials and another hub for a local music scene is the local recording studio. I didn't even know we had one until I was looking for one. Was I looking for one? I couldn't afford one. I couldn't afford the whole days. So I thought I had no idea what a recording studio cost these days. It used to cost £150 a day. So I recorded my first EP album, was a whole album, acoustic guitar, harmonica, and I opened the wave and I just noticed it wasn't sounding as loud as everybody else's. I opened the waveform in Audacity and compared it to my favourite bands, and the difference was unbelievable. So I started looking about and thinking, how could I get this to make it sound like that? Obviously not musically, but how can I make it sound the same sort of volume? So I did a little search around and fell across this fellow who sat in the studio with me today, Mr. Raoul Crane. Hello, Raoul.
Hello, Paul.
Thanks for finally getting in here. I'm sorry we had to cancel before. The big C word got in the way. That's COVID, not cancer, by the way. Got in the way, didn't it? So sorry for cancelling on you before,
no
mate.
worries.
So yeah, you run Blaze Studios in Caister, don't you? Which is
Yep.
about sort of 8-10 miles away from here.
Yeah, about 25 minutes, I think.
25 mins in the old
too bad.
Yeah, it depends on if the bridge is shut or whatever it is, doesn't it? Bloody expenses.
Or them lights at the Halfleys estate.
Yeah. So I found you on I can't remember where I just did a regular search or if I did Facebook. So yeah, and you mixed and mastered my first album, didn't you?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Just that's kind of the thing I wanted to do when I first set up Blaze Studios. Well, I'll talk about how it started.
Yeah, please do.
Years and years ago, I was in a band, my first band, called Raucous.
Yeah, I remember Raucous.
Yeah.
Like I said, we used to live in the same town. I used to live in Caister.
Yeah.
I remember Raucous were much like your other musical project, Floating Greyhounds.
Yeah.
You had every gig going. You boys were absolutely everywhere, and with good reason because you were freaking awesome.
We were all right. I think we were just something niche at the time, and done some crazy stuff like dressed up, and we obviously always tried to do songs. You know them songs where you think, well, that's a good song, but you never knew who done it.
Oh, really?
One of them for me was Basket Case by Green Day.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know who Green Day was, but I always had heard the song.
Right.
So, yeah, we just done stuff like that. But the way the studio came about is we went to Purple Studios in Norwich. That was in that church.
Now, everybody I knew before I'd heard of Blaze Studios had used Purple
Everyone
Studios.
had. That was the only one around, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Hammy was running it. I think it'd come from Galston Way, I think, hadn't it?
I believe so.
I think it was originally called Purple Rain.
Okay,
Studios, I think.
yeah. But I just know every one of my mates who were in bands around that time. Oh, Purple. You could go and stay over there.
Yeah.
Legendary, yeah.
And we went there. It's Raucous. And at the time, I think we were only about 15. Thought we were rock stars.
So about 4 years ago?
Yeah. I think 3.5. Yeah. We all thought we were rock stars because we were 15, and obviously everyone at school thought we were awesome, as they do when you're in a band. And I just remember going in, and I can never remember who the engineer was. And he introduced himself, and I said, what do you do? And he said, my job is to get you guys done and dusted and out of here as quick as possible.
Oh, wow. Oh, really?
So
made no bones about that then. Not a great impression.
And I thought, and I was just young, I thought, didn't really think anything of it. And then I thought to myself, I think we'd wrote an original, and we were a covers band, really. So we'd gone in and done some covers to make a CD and sell, just to...
Well, you were pulling in the crowd. It would seem a shame not to monopolise that. And also, I find those sort of demos are great for getting gigs, aren't they?
Yeah.
At the time, handing out CDs, handing out tapes, cassettes and stuff like that was a way to get a gig. So they couldn't go on YouTube and look at a clip of it.
That's right. Not like that, yeah. So my dad was the manager, and they used to ring up pubs, and they'd say, well, have you got a CD?
Yeah.
So we invested a couple of days in this studio just to do some covers. We did write an original one, and obviously I was fascinated by all the gear, watching and learning.
You were that kid. What does that do? What does this do? What does this do? And he's like, bugger off.
Yeah, I kind of just sat back. I remember sitting in the control room, and I had this massive desk, and it was recording on ADAT. Like they were like video machines.
I remember ADAT. Some of our younger listeners may not remember some of that.
And I remember we had this little controller that could rewind it and fast forward
so it's fairly advanced for the. I'm thinking the time you were thinking about, because around that time I was going in studios and they still had 2-inch tape.
Yeah, I think he had 2, so I think he could record 16 channels at once, I think.
Check him out.
Yeah. And a bit of I mean, the mixing desk was massive.
Yeah.
And, you know, straight away people were like, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I was quite fascinated by it. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And how he got sounds. And I remember, like, the drummer being in the other room, you know, doing the testing of the kit, hitting the drums as he asked. And he was sweeping around, and you could hear it go from, like, sounding really crap to, hang on, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
And that was, like, quite fascinating. And when he'd said to me to get you buggers out as quick as possible, and he obviously just meant it jokingly.
Sure.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what I mean? He obviously thought, oh look, another bunch of youngsters doing covers. You know, this isn't going to be any good.
Sure.
And it got to the point where I thought, do you know what? People make their music, and if it sounds crap, people are going to just turn it off anyway.
Right.
Whether you're into music or not, if you turn it on, it's going to sound crap. And that came to me when I used to work in the Never Turn Back behind the bar.
Okay, the old pub down on the beach there.
Yeah, Manor Road.
Yeah.
And they used to have bands on, and he used to get CDs in, and he wasn't into music at all, and he'd play them, and if it sounded crap, just the quality, not necessarily,
Really?
not necessarily, you know, the musicianship, just the sound quality. It's and I was be hang on, actually they're pretty good.
They're really good. Yeah.
You know, it just sounds like they've recorded it in their garage or. You know,
as you did. I mean, you talk about those early demos and stuff like that. We would literally sit around. I mean, it was harmonicas, so I guess it wasn't so bad. Just stick a tape recorder, and even when I was in Nexus in the sort of late '90s, we had a mini disc recorder with a microphone input, and just stuck that in the middle of the room.
Yeah,
and
if you wanted someone louder, they got closer to the mic.
Yeah.
Typical Beatles kind of thing.
Absolutely, and we'd give that out for demos, which seemed to be all right. But, you know, they were still, like you say, you can hear, it gave the impression that whether we were any good or not.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And I just remember him, like, just, you know, not thinking about these bands just because the sound quality was crap. And I was like, they actually, you know, they playing tight. If you listen to that, so I thought to myself, why are bands doing this? That it's sounding crap. That was my first thinking, and I must have only been about probably 18 because I just started working behind a bar there, and it was all to do with budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally, all to do with budget.
Yeah, completely.
Not necessarily musicianship or equipment, but budget.
Young people are probably either still at college, still at school, they haven't got a full-time job, and even those, you know, budding musicians, especially original musicians, you're not got a bunch of money. Gigs still don't, unfortunately, paying a whole bunch of money.
Nope.
And enough spare to be able to put into that recording, and if you are, then you're going to put your heart and soul into it, and you know that's that.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, right, these musicians, even if they're youngsters who haven't got the money, they need to be able to showcase their original songs at the best quality it can be. So I started, like, obviously I'd been messing around with stuff on computers and that for a couple of years before then.
So you're talking about just like the home PC that you had knocking around?
I had a 4-track.
Did you?
I got one Christmas.
Yeah.
This is a classic.
Good old mum and dad.
Yeah.
Your 4-track. Didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, my dad did, because he was in a band years ago.
Oh, you see.
So he was very musical.
Yeah.
And I got it from Cook's. Tascam 4-track. I think it's about 249 quid.
I had the Fostex version. Yeah. I think someone gave me that, actually. I think it was old technology by the time I got it. So I had the Fostex 4-track version, yeah. So I know the one you mean.
They were right to learn on, weren't they?
Yeah, great. Bouncing down and stuff
Yeah,
like
to get as many tracks as you could, yeah. So I got that, and I'd been messing around, and, you know, nothing ever really sounded any good. Not, you know, as you could get. So I'd been messing around, and I thought, right, one day I'm gonna do a studio, and I'm not necessarily going to do it to make money. I'm going to do it because I love it, and I want to give these young bands who have got original material that you actually think is quite good the opportunity to get it to sound as good as possible. So I then brought a Roland VS 2480. Can you remember them?
No, you're beyond. I mean, I think I'd kind of moved like when I was late 90s. I kind of settled down short around 2000. Are we talking around then?
Yeah.
And then sort of left the music scene for quite some time. So I think there's a whole gap in my history, which has been, these podcasts have been really helpful in filling me in on that whole piece of history. There's sort of 15 years there
missing.
where I kind of just played in a blues band on a weekend for a PVPA and brought my kids up and stuff, so yeah, but this is what I did. This is a
what it
DGA
was,
now, or is it a digital recorder?
It was a digital recorder. At the time, obviously, PCs weren't powerful enough to do anything.
The latency, I remember a friend of mine talking about it, was horrendous.
Yeah.
Sound cards had to be upwards of £1,000 a piece, etc. Just to get them through the processor. Right?
Yeah. So I brought this VS. I think it was about $2,500.
Jesus.
I got it on credit, as you do, interest-free credit from Digital Village.
I got a rig and bag of guitar on HP from Sound Gear in Yarmouth.
Oh, Sound Gear!
Mike Easter used to run that.
Yeah.
Good old boy. So yeah, I bought stuff on. Yeah, everything was on tick back in.
Oh yeah, if you're a musician, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got this Roland, and it was, do you know what? It was bloody good.
Yeah.
And it had everything built in: compressors, EQs, effects, and it was bloody good quality. And you didn't have to suffer the fact that, oh damn, you can't, you haven't got enough RAM to do another track, and you're stuck. It could cope.
Oh wow.
Because it was built to cope with its limitations.
Right.
And I actually went out and done some mobile recordings.
Did you?
Yeah, for the Rock Doctors. Can you remember the Rock Doctors?
I do remember the Rock Doctors,
I done the Rock Doctors. I done a band called Blister. I've done a band called Full Circle.
So would you say this is where you're sort of learning your craft?
Yeah.
I take it you didn't go to any sort of sound engineering college or like you didn't do sound engineering as a degree. I don't suppose it was probably available.
No,
back in them
It
days.
might have been, but because of the band, I never went
No.
away because we were obviously doing quite a lot of gigs.
Yeah.
And everything, and you think you're going to be a rock star, don't you? Like we all do. And,
Had you got into work? I forgot. I've been meaning to ask you. Do you have a day job?
Yeah.
Do you, mate? I'm dying to know what you do. You don't have to tell me. Don't mind me on funk business. But I'd love to know.
Before COVID, I was a music teacher.
Oh, real awesome.
And worked at Stalham Junior School.
Great.
Done that for 17 years there.
Wow, so passing down the line.
Before that, I worked for the Norfolk Music Service as a guitar teacher.
Well, you are an insane guitarist. I mean, I didn't know quite how good until we saw you down, because obviously we haven't bumped into each other too many times.
No.
And I know Raucous were good, but until you just said, I really didn't realise that was your band. And when I saw you down the Jolly Sailors last weekend, cracking out Sweet Child of Mine, and not just doing like the main riff, which is hard enough, God I know, but then improvising a solo with two-handed tapping as well was something else, mate.
Well, when you've played it that many times, you've got to do something.
Yeah, but keep it interesting.
Yeah, that's like I changed the words to a lot of songs, and people are like, that's not the right words, and I'm like, look, okay. I've sung that song 50 million times, so I'm going to change it just to see if people are listening, because you'll say it, and the people who are listening,
you bugger that, or you do that.
He's just said something rude in there. So. I've lost where we were. So we're using this Roland.
You see, sort of learning your craft on the road, sort of getting live.
Just doing live recordings for people.
Yeah.
And the Rock Doctors one, a lot of people today still say that is one of the best live recordings ever that they'd ever done.
So can I ask you something about live recordings quickly then? Because a friend of mine said that when you hear live albums, like by professional, by the big boys and stuff like that, there's only certain parts of it that are from the actual live gig, and they overdub later. How much of that is? I mean, I take it you weren't doing that with the Rock Doctors back in the day. You weren't saying, "Oh, right, okay, we'll over-record the rhythm guitar and redo the."
See, I think now it's easier with people using Kempers,
right?
And all this VST stuff.
What's a Kemper without getting too far down the rabbit hole? What is that? I've heard the name thrown around a bit.
It is one of my desert island bits of kit.
Mm-hmm.
That came about by accident. I was using a Line 6 pod for playing guitar.
I remember when they came out, Digital Revolution. They were.
And I think it was Academy of Sound at the time, or what they called Carlsbad. They had a thing where if you got up early in the morning and got to the shop at 9 o'clock, they had 2 at a really discounted price.
Right.
So I got there to get the kidney bean one. Can you remember?
That little red one, yeah.
Something ridiculous. I think they were like $2.50 new, but they had 2 going for £100. So I was like, right, I'm getting up there. So I got one, and I fell into the Line 6 kind of trap and really got into their stuff.
Yeah.
And to think of it now, then it wasn't as good as everything is now.
So it's a digital lamp modelling in its
and
earliest
you could
days
tell.
then. Yeah.
You
And
could
there was
tell.
I mean, the Valve guys, we all know that the Valve two Valve guys are never going to change. We know that.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, I'm a bit on the fence because I'm still sort of listening to stuff like that. But I've heard some digital stuff, especially in the patch bays in DAWs, that make me go, really?
Can you tell?
Can you tell? Does it matter?
Yeah. So I was into that, and I then got a Line 6 to gig with. I got a Line 6 Flexitone, which was like their amp version of the kidney bean, which was quite good. Then I upgraded to their flagship amp, which was the Veta, which was the tits at the time. And I was gigging with that for years. Even had a Line 6 Variax guitar, and I went down to the factory.
Did you get a Line 6 tattoo in any of this as
No,
well?
I have no tattoos. So,
You don't put a bumper sticker on a Ferrari, do
no,
you?
no. So I was really into their stuff because they were obviously innovating what was to come. And we done a gig, and I'm trying to think where we done a gig, and my amp just packed up,
Oh, God.
and I was like, oh. But I managed to get through it because you could obviously DI at the box. So the actual speaker stopped working, but the DI was working fine. So I
So you
managed
stuck
to
it
get
into the PA?
Yeah,
Off you went.
got through to the gig.
Yeah.
Rung Line 6 up and said, look, my amp's broke. Every now and then they'd service it for me anyway. I said, look, it's broke. I need to send it to you, but I've got some gigs coming up. Can you do it? And he was like, well, we might be able to if we've got the part. I was like, what? He's like, well, we've stopped making them, and certain parts are now becoming obsolete. So I was like, damn, the Veta is now going to go to amp heaven, and I've got to find something else. And I was teaching guitar to a lad who he's a Lowestoft boy, and I said, I got him into Line 6 as well, and he said about this Kemper. And I was like, what the hell's this Kemper? Never bloody heard of
Well,
it.
it sounds to me like you were fairly on top of your tech. Like, you were sort of, in touch with what's going on, had your finger on a pulse, and to be thrown a curveball about a piece of kit you hadn't heard of
Yeah.
must have been disturbing, right?
And he was like, just YouTube it. And I remember YouTubing this. They were in, I think it was like NAMM or something like that they were showcasing this amp. And they
The
had
music show, not Vietnam.
Yeah, not Vietnam. They had a music show. And they had this Mesa Boogie amp that they were profiling.
Okay.
And
So
switching
profiling
between.
is...
So what they do, they're literally sucking the soul out of the amp.
Right, so they're just making it so it
Copying
sounds
it.
like
Yeah.
okay, it's got
So
cloning.
It takes a snapshot of the setting of that amp at the time.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily interact the same as the amp. But let's say, for example, you've got your sound, you think, whoa, that's awesome, that's our sound. You then put a microphone in front of it,
Yeah.
do all this gubbins on the front.
I have heard that profiling thrown around, that name thrown around. Never thought to ask what the
What
hell
it
it
is.
meant. And now I
And
know.
it sends these like alien noises through the amp and then through the microphone, obviously analyses it
Yeah.
and copies the amp. And what they had this Mesa Boogie and they were going A-B-ing from it.
Right.
And I know it was on YouTube, but I was like,
You cannot
that
tell
sounds
me.
exactly the same, man.
Really.
You know? I was like,
So this, if I'm understanding this correctly, this Kempner head module, whatever it is, rack mounted piece of kit, I take
Yep.
it. So that then samples an amplifier and then reproduces that amplifier
Yeah.
sound, whatever that amplifier might be.
exactly, yeah.
Amazing.
So a lot of the people who had these like vintage amp valves but wanted to use them, but obviously the more they use them, they're breaking down, and then
It seems to me like the more I read about valve amps, they seem to have like a bit in the middle of their lifetime that's perfect, and the start is crap and the end is kind of crap, and there's a bit in the middle where it goes sweet and then it goes shit again.
yeah. So people were then profiling these legendary amps maybe that the Beatles had used,
Yeah.
and daren't turn them on because the valves would go.
Right.
And they've got that actual sound.
Wow.
So I was like, right, I'm going to have one of them. But you couldn't demo one anywhere.
God.
So I was like, well, stuff it, I'm just going to buy one. So I brought one and I was just literally blown away with it. It was just like, oh my God, this thing is just incredible. And it's got all the effects in. And it was just copied all the amps that you wanted. But you didn't have the aggro of, valves going. So I was like, well, okay. So I got one, used it live, and I was taking it in and out of my studio that I'd kind of made at home.
So the digital had suddenly made a home in a room in your house by this point. So this is the fledgling part of having a studio.
Yeah.
So it started with a home studio that was for your own sort of bits and
Just
pieces.
messing around.
You haven't kind of got to thingy this yet, right?
So it was kind of like bubbling. I was like, this is pretty good. You could get these great guitar tones direct, and you had so much other options on there. So I was like, right, okay. But I'd had enough of keep taking it in week in, week out. So I brought another one. So I had two.
God.
So one stayed at home.
Yeah.
One was my gigging one that obviously was packed away. Take it to the gigs, bring it in. Happy days. And then they kind of got me on the beta team, Kemper, because I was one of the very first people to start using them.
Yeah.
So they were sending me the new software to try out and stuff like that, which was pretty cool.
Awesome.
And some crazy stuff happened. And I then decided, right, in the studio, if we want to double track guitars or, make it sound like we've got two different amps, we need two Kempers. But I didn't want to have to keep bringing my other Kemper in and out. So I thought, stuff it, I'm going to buy another one.
How many do you have now? Should we skip
Four.
to Four.
So they then brought a floorboard version out.
Oh my God.
And I was like, that's handy. I haven't got to have another rack and a pedal. I just got a pedal.
Yeah.
So obviously I brought that one, and all the other ones that I had, which were rack mounts, are in the studio.
That is an impressive amount of tech, and I'm always, I think some people shy away from tech, but I think it's great if you know how to use it, and if you use it properly. I think it's tech for tech's sake is one thing, but you had an impressive, as far as it looked like a mean piece of kit when I saw you live, but it wasn't ostentatious. There wasn't stuff, wires and antennas everywhere. It was clean. You knew what you needed it for, and that was that.
And it's had the same sounds built in. I'm one of these people that I don't tone chase.
No, okay,
right?
Really,
because that opens up a rabbit hole, and you never.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of in the harmonica world. I have to say that harmonica sounds that we put together, that I initially put, and then you enhanced and made demonic, to be honest, which I absolutely love, especially one of my track Methuselah, that went absolutely mental. Harmonica players, I can imagine getting awfully snooty about. Now, I know an awful lot of tone chasers, not known personally, well I do know some personally, but a lot. Harmonica tone is something that through amps, valve amps and stuff like that, there's a lot going on. And now I'm dabbling more into the guitar. There's a lot of people, like you say, tone chasing. It seems like you can throw a lot of money and a lot of time out down that, right?
You can, and I always believe that you in the guitar world, you're not going to sound like Eddie Van Halen because you're not Eddie Van Halen.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Is it in the hands? That's a conversation I keep asking people.
And then,
is it all in the hands?
It's tone is in the fingers.
Yeah.
I'd say 80% is.
Yeah.
So, if you've got a good guitar player, as we get on to, you've had Mark from A.
Yes.
Yeah. So
insanely
I mixed some of
good
his
guitarist.
Yes.
It's frightening when he told me he'd learned an Eddie Van Halen solo. I think when he was about 13 or 14. I was like, my God, really? I said, yeah, they had me join the band because I could play that solo by Eddie Van Halen. I was like, my God, yeah. Well, no one's going to say no after that, are they?
No, that's right. Yeah, you're in.
Well, we might have to tone it down because I've written this song with 3 chords in it.
But when he sends me some of his stuff for his solo project,
the Radiumised Horse, yeah, he said he's going to once the because we'll get onto this in a bit. The new studio is built. Yeah. He wants to come and just jam out a live thing.
Yeah. So, but what he sends me, he just records at home.
Yeah.
He's shit on guitar player, so it's already sounding good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you're taking something that's like 80% there and just adding that next 20% to make it 100%.
Well, this is, I think when we're getting back to that bit where you said earlier, whereby people were that guy you knew was throwing away the CDs because the quality of the recording was crap, even though you were saying, "Oh, hang on, the band's great."
Yeah.
So they're sharing the ship for an eighth of the tar, kind of. For want of a, let's get Norfolk. I know we didn't want to, but there's a saying, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the other thing that the Kemper does is you've got the same sound wherever you are.
Right.
So going back to that question about how live is a live CD nowadays, if the band are using Kemper, or anything like the Kemper, because there's plenty out of there, now there's all the competition and everything.
Yeah.
Whatever sound you used on that song, that's there, you plug it in, and you can patch it in.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And no one would know the difference, because you haven't got to have the 4x12, and the microphone all there in the same position, and you've got to have the crowd singing because you're going to get some bleed. I wouldn't say they're overdubbing everything. If there's what I think they normally do is they record lots of the gigs and then
cherry pick
the bit. And let's say the guitarist made a mistake, they might be able to, because they'll record it with Pro Tools probably on the go. They'll take the bit out of there and they'll put it in. That's this one you played at the O2.
Oh, I see.
Was really good.
Stick it into the Wembley set.
And no one's going to know. So I think that's probably what they would do.
Right.
I wouldn't have thought that they'd do it all at home, but you never know. Do you?
You never know what magic.
Look what happened with Milli Vanilli. Do you know what I mean?
You never know what wizardry these engineers are cooking up at home.
That's right.
So we just touched on it briefly. So you're having a whole studio built from the ground up. It's the ground down as well.
Yeah. Well, this is the mad moment, and
see, when I visited your studio, and I have just the once, to do a Cherry record whereby I had to play the guitar solo on a Queen song because the guitarist there couldn't actually play the solo. And I don't mean you, I mean the other guitarist. I dare say you could have totally reeled it off. And it was in your converted garage. You bricked up the sliding door because you didn't really want that rattling around in the wind when you're doing the thing. No. So you've outgrown that a bit, have you?
Yeah, so that came about. My wife got pregnant. Obviously, I couldn't make noise in the house, so I moved into the garage. And then I remember watching a Fight Star studio diary thing, and there's a guy who I speak to quite regularly called Carl Bown, who is like an engineer producer, and he'd done that album, or the album that they'd done the studio diary from, and it was in a shed. It was in he called it Treehouse Studios, and he's now
this is like a YouTube or a podcast?
Yeah, just a YouTube that the band Fight Star.
Fight Star.
Do you know,
I'd never heard of him. I thought it was about something else.
Right.
Fight Star ting. Where?
So Busted.
Yes.
So Charlie from Busted, when he left Busted, he went and done Fight Star, which is a bit like rocky, metal-y kind of like. Cool. And they recorded this album. I don't think they'd done all of it, but this Carl Bown was on this video diary, and they were recording in a shed, but he'd done it out all nice, and I was just like, I've got that album, and that sounds like shit hot.
Yeah.
So it just came to me that you don't need to be in Abbey Road Studios to get a good sounding
for sure
album.
Which is why what led me on to start a home studio, which we're sat in right now, and I've recorded. Although I think most of the wizardry of making it sound commercial is up to your good self with the mixing and mastering, but as far as the actual recording go, and we were sort of talking about this with Sam Wilson the other day, affordable mics, affordable interface computers that can actually handle it and stuff like that. So it's basically the environment that's left, isn't it?
And I think the player is what makes it, like when your stuff comes to me, it's already pretty shit hot.
Bless
you. Do you know what I mean?
So you've not got to take out the bum notes, auto-tune.
No, or I can delve straight into mixing it, and everything's like lined up, everything's hitting on the beat and stuff like that. So that already brings everything tight.
Yeah.
And you're not correcting things. And
so, what kind of corrections would you expect
to
do? Yeah. Or have you done without? You don't have to mention any names.
I've done.
So I talked with Sam Wilson about gridding and
Again, that depends on the genre.
Right.
So if you've got like something like Slipknot, you want it gridding, because if you've got all them real fast double kicks, they need to be gridded up.
Right.
You know, if you've got something bluesy, it needs to have that
slip behind a beat, but
you know, swinging in and out. It's all to do with genre. So when I'm doing gridding or anything like that, it's always genre dependent, or necessarily the band. So I might speak to them and say, you know, if they've recorded it or if they've sent it to me, I might say, this track here, you know, it sways about a bit. Is that what you were after?
Okay, yeah.
And I might say, yeah, it's got to have that vibe.
Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because it's their music. I'm not there to totally change it. But they might not be aware that it does that.
Sure.
Because they might have just recorded it.
Yeah.
And they've just got used to hearing it like that.
So how far, when you say you're not there to sort of, you know, like change their music and stuff like that, how far do you go? Do you have, because I've spoken to some engineers that will be like, nothing crap's coming out of my studio. If it's badly played, I'm not having it leave my studio. I've done some session work for a chap, and I played the harmonica part, mate, mucked it up, and he was like, no, I can't have that go out my studio. Or is there a sort of like, well, that's what the band want, that's what, you know, is there sort of a trade-off sometimes with those things?
I always try and build a rapport with the musicians or the bands that I have in. One, because I want them to come back and feel comfortable.
When I first sent you that first set of streams, I was absolutely terrified that you turn back and say, you fucked that guitar up on the third song in the second chorus, mate. Do you want to send us another one? And you didn't. And I was like, and I thought, when I listened to it back, I thought, perhaps I didn't so bad then.
But sometimes mistakes in the music, when it's all playing, unless you've recorded it and you know it's there, people won't hear it. A classic one of that is Half the World Away by Oasis. Listen to the end, and Noel Gallagher's picking the guitar, and he glitches a couple of the picking notes.
Oh, really?
But no one ever mentions that.
Sure.
But me being producer head, I listen to a lot of stuff that's going on, and when I hear it now, I'm like, here it comes the, and I think it's a C chord.
We've only got to think about the pedal squeak comes to mind on Led Zeppelin's. Since I've been loving you, it's like the pedal squeak on that, and then John Bonham in the background going, grunting, and so it's done by a human being.
That's it. Yeah.
It's done by a real band. And real people fluff. They don't play perfectly every single time,
right.
do they? You know?
And another thing is, like, I've had people who've wanted the you know, when you slide on a guitar and you get that thing,
the squeak.
They want, and I'm like, that's part of the instrument.
Sure.
Why you don't want to take that away?
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit like I use like a de-esser a lot to you know, quieten the S's and T's down. You don't want to take them out totally. You just don't want them to
be peaking
jumping
and to be the main focus of the song. I guess if they're a byproduct of it, then I guess they're okay. So it's about keeping a human element and playing a balance between what the band want and, you know, producing a good quality product for them, because your reputation, Raoul, is everyone I speak to, you've built a great reputation, which is why you have so much work these days into the studio, and it doesn't come from just chuntering out and getting people in, as the chap said there, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's right. Because I remember someone saying as well that I think you get 10 seconds on like Spotify or iTunes if someone plays a song.
Yeah.
And then they'll skip to the next one.
Sure.
So you've got that. It's got to sound good. That
terrifies me. That it's like the pressure on to, like, you know, capture them and stuff like that. And not all songs do that. Some songs like to build, don't they?
Yeah.
Some
I think
like
that's the problem we've got with the music industry. But that's another chat. Sometimes, you know, I think it's totally saturated now.
Yeah.
Because, you know, people can record in their bedroom and upload it with DistroKid to iTunes or whatever, and you can get anything out there. But then again, there are some quality
really are
musicians.
I mean, it's the
albums.
the stuff that comes out of your studio from other guys. Like we had Nathan from Like Optimists and his solo album and stuff like that. And I've been doing a number with Coral Cross. I sent you one as well, so we've got another one we've got queued up for you as well. I need to ask you a question about that after we've finished the podcast. So yeah, there was some excellent high quality stuff. But like you say, because anyone and his wife can do that, and, you know, their kids and their dog and stuff like that can upload to Spotify, then it's just absolutely, there's kind of too much for me. I almost like, I go down, there's a record shop down there, and they are second hand, I like going through there because there's a limited amount I can flick through the rock section and not be sort of, bombarded.
No, that's right. I mean, in the days of CDs, obviously the kids probably don't know what they are nowadays, but you had a CD and you put it in and you listened to the whole album.
Yeah.
And by the time you got to work, you'd listen to it, and then on the way home you might have another album in there.
Sure, yeah.
Where now, you can talk to Siri or whatever and say, play this music, and then once it's played that track, that might, from what you've been playing before, play another track that you've never heard of. And I must admit that I've stumbled across some really good bands.
Yeah.
Where I've gone, like after a night's gig, I've gone, Siri, play some music I might like. And it plays a couple of tracks that I know. And then suddenly puts this track in, and I'm
wow.
Whoa, who the hell is this band?
Yeah.
And I'm
so the algorithm's working good for you on that front, eh?
Yeah.
That's brave. I am terrified. I like to... But at the same point, I liked an album because I could listen to it and discover songs by a band I liked because I've heard their single, and I've heard other songs that are more obscure, and discover that about them. But I think I should get more brave.
Yeah, be more brave.
Yeah. Do you miss like the track listing of albums
totally,
and stuff
absolutely.
like that? Yeah.
The main thing I miss is finding where it was recorded.
Yeah.
Who mixed it?
Well, I told you, when I gave my last album, Mr. Smith, that you did for us, when I gave that to Chris Helm-Seals, as absolutely first thing he did, he opened it up. He didn't even look at the cover or the back of it. He opened it up and he went, "Oh, mixed and mastered by Blaze Studios." It was the first thing he looked for.
So that's what I do. And I think that's probably from years ago when I was into, I'm still into music production.
Sure.
And, I can normally tell who's mixed an album.
Really?
Yeah.
Certain
people who I really listen to and look up to. Going back to like that Carl Bown who done the Fight Star album, he does all like, Bullet for My Valentine and stuff like that. And I've chatted to him a few times regarding the studio build about some things, because he's doing work for labels.
Yeah, right.
So he's pretty damn good at what he does.
Yeah.
The other guy who I spoke to regarding my studio build was Matt O'Grady, who does like You Me at Six. He's done Death of Anna, who came from King's Lynway. Don't know if you know them. Yeah, they're they've done this album called Fools and Worthless Liars, and he produced it and mixed it. The production on it just really suited what they were doing. And I got chatting to him on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I asked him about some stuff and what he's doing here, and he was really good at helping out.
I love that these musicians are being generous to you, and I find working with you a very generous musician, generous with your knowledge and generous with your time for coming here. But I think that any sort of scene and any sort of any musical progression has to happen if we just leave it. It's those sound like guys who left their egos at the door. And probably don't have any, and are just overjoyed to be talking about music and helping you out.
Yeah, well, I remember talking to Carl via Instagram. We were talking about the speaker setup that's going to be in the new studio. The guy who's designing it for me, Paul from Wise Owl Acoustics. That's what he does.
Right.
So it's all about having the best setup. And he was asking
me. So we're talking type of speakers, positioning, direction.
Even the room. He's designed the whole studio, amazing. So it's totally soundproof.
Yeah.
It's got 2 rooms, tracking room and control room, and he's optimised the space that I could have to be the best studio in that space.
I'm so excited to see this thing that's half built and covered in tarpaulin at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's got a roof now. It's got a roof. Fantastic. The floor was laid Monday.
Right.
And we're framing out on Monday, me and a friend, James Pendle. He's in the guitarist for Millie Manders in the Shut Up.
Oh, yeah. So, great band, yeah.
He's pretty good DIYer, so he's coming round. We've got the plans.
Fantastic.
And me being a crap DIYer, I'm obviously going to be making the cups of tea, and he's going to say, saw that bit of wood, and I'll saw it there, and then we're going to build it. So
fantastic.
The porch is being put in 2 weeks' time, and then it'll be all the acoustic fabric. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it's going to be done by August.
Wow, that's great.
That's what I'm hoping, but there's been a few setbacks.
Well, I know a lot of bands that'll be queuing up at the bloody door to get back in there.
Yeah, I've had bands ring me. Is it done yet?
Because at the minute you're because you did my mixing and mastering in your lounge. Did you have it set up in there?
I've got all my gear set up in there. Well, I had to have it set up because I
got to work, man.
Well, got to work, and plus I love to tweak and while the missus is watching, I don't know, The Chase or something, I can be in there, you know. tweaking or, practicing something, let's try and get this drum sound.
I mean, do you find yourself latching on to albums like just because they're well produced, even though it's not your cup of tea for music? Do you have any recommended listening for us? Because I do remember in the 90s, bit like Sound on Sound magazine, and they were like, anything Butch Vig, John Leckie and stuff like that. Have a listen to them boys. They seemed to me like they were a lot more into being producers as far as what goes together musically with the album than that. I mean, 2 questions there. What do you recommend listening to as far as good production? Do you have anything that really makes you go, ooh?
Yeah,
there's... And the other one is, do you do any producing for people and go, do you think you ought to, would it be an idea to stick some cowbell in there?
Yeah, got to have a cowbell.
More cowbell.
More cowbell. I do some producing. Again, I normally discuss this with the band first. Because I don't want to take over their baby, shall I say.
If you've got a good idea and they're open to it, do you go for it?
A lot of people come to me, who I record a lot, because they like my production and they know I get the sound that they want.
Yeah.
So, a few bands, 2 lads who I have worked with since my studio first opened, Glenn and Owen from Sons of Mark.
Yeah. We were on the same bill as Emmy every Friday, yeah.
They... have used me forever. They were actually the first people ever in my studio.
Is that right?
Yeah. Glenn and Owen, they came over. They were in a band called Game Plan. It was like a covers band. They'd done a few originals. And they came over and recorded. And they were pretty chuffed with how it sounded. And from then on, they ring me up. They were actually in the other night doing a new song.
Great.
Because I know how they want a sound.
And so this is a long-term working relationship now, isn't it? And I've got to say, 3rd album of mine now, we're in a long-term working relationship. And I think this is great about you and the way you work as well as you do build that rapport. And I noticed there was one thing on one song, and I didn't ask you to do it. And there's a little echo on Domestic Bliss. I'm thinking lately. And at first I thought, what's he doing? And then it was like, that is awesome. It's like the best thing I've heard. I wouldn't have thought of that in a million years.
Can't be delayed.
And it makes me kind of wish I'd gone back and asked you for more suggestions for the previous 2, and I'll definitely be asking for more on those.
Oh, well, that's cool. Yeah.
So it's about the production thing, or the producer role, as far as song suggestions, instrumentation, orchestration, and stuff like that.
Yeah, anything like that.
It's sort of dependent on artists and stuff. Yeah.
People might come with, just like I've had a few artists in who are just singers with guitars who have got these great songs, but they want to make them more poppy, say, or a bit more modern.
Or perhaps they only play guitar and sing and don't
they don't know where to go next.
Or MIDI or guitars or anything.
So they send me a clip on WhatsApp of them playing and singing, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty shit hot. And I get an idea, and then they come to me and they bust out the chords and the vocals as like a scratch track, and then we build the song from there. And again, that I only do that if the artists want me to do that.
So you have like MIDI capabilities, keyboards, and obviously you're an incredible guitar player. I noticed there are quite a few PRS guitars on your wall. Are you a little bit of a fan?
Yes.
Was it 5 on there, I think?
It's 3.
There's 3, is there? Oh, well, I don't know. The wife wants you to know that he wants you to know that there's 3.
Yeah. There's only 3. I've got the one I used to gig with, which is my White Dave Navarro one. I've got my Custom 22, which was my one I had before that. And then I've got my Standard, which I got when I was 15 for a Christmas present. And had to... Mum and Dad put some money towards it.
I was going to say, that's a hell of a lot of money for a Christmas present. I don't think all my Christmases when I was a kid together came to the price for PRS.
I had to get it on finance. So I was 15, so actually I didn't get on finance. My dad did. And I had to pay him through gigs from Raucous monthly.
For the gigs that he was getting. So he would get you the gigs and go, cheers then.
Yeah.
That's
and
like
the
government, wasn't he really? It's like...
Certainly was.
That takes dad tax to a whole new level. The dad tax where your kids get sweets, and you got to go dad tax, which means you've got to have some of the sweets for it. Having your dad's dad tax was quite cool. Really.
He was like, well, he tried and talk my mum into like, she's like, you can't have that much money for Christmas or birthday, and Dad would like, I was being 15, you can't get finance. And it. I was like, Dad, I need this guitar. It sounds, and he's being a musician himself.
So he was in what bands was he in? And we'd know
he was a singer.
Stuff.
A lot of people come up to me and know his band, but he was a singer in a band called Pearly Brown, And
so what are we talking, 50s, 60s-ish, 70s?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Sort of around pubs and clubs, or was he a bit more of a...
No, he was pubs and that.
Because up your way, there's also lots of holiday camps and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'd done holiday camps.
No.
They'd done some real crazy stuff, because they used to, like, dress up and...
Oh, yeah.
And just, it was very surreal.
Entertain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently they were quite popular in the day, from what I've heard.
So he was very supportive of your music from a young age and stuff.
So like Buster
that,
James.
Yeah.
Their band, he was in a band called Crow, I think, wasn't he?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't know Buster too much.
And I think my dad supported them. And so, yeah, you know, if you mention Pearly Brown to the older musicians,
sure, they would know.
The more mature musicians, they'd say, I remember that band.
I love how you swapped old for more mature. Because,
more mature.
Yeah, well, we are more mature
That's
now
right.
as well, aren't we? You know,
so I obviously wasn't born at the time, so he's obviously in his early 20s.
You know, to have a musical house to grow up in must have been awesome, you know, and been quite inspirational as well, right?
Yeah.
You have a good record collection.
Yeah, you just go through my dad's record collection and play Sex Pistols.
Yes.
He had the Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction album on tape.
Oh, yeah.
He got it from a petrol station. Can you remember when they used to sell tapes?
Well, I remember they used to give away C90s with so many gallons of petrol. And my dad would then copy albums because although my parents weren't musical and they never played an instrument, I mean, I'm the first person in my family for generations, as it goes back, God knows I've looked, to play a musical instrument. But they were massive music lovers. And my dad would record his LPs on a tape for me, especially after he left. He took his record collection with him and be like, listen to this, which is where the first time I heard Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that was on a C90 cassette from a garage. Otherwise, I would probably not have discovered it till I was older.
Wow.
So yeah, you know, I think it does have a huge influence on you. And so yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Who's producing good, well-engineered albums? Who do you like? From any era?
Any era,
more or less. I know it's probably a big question.
There's a few that obviously I go to, and when albums are released or songs, I'm like, whoa, that person done it, so I gotta listen. You got Mutt Lange, done all Def Leppard.
Yeah.
Bryan Adams, and the great thing about him is you won't find anything on YouTube of any videos of him doing it.
You've literally got to listen to the albums. The
there's
proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Well, yeah, but you know, you can go on there, can't you? And there's videos of people in the studio of certain producers doing stuff. There's nothing of Mutt Lange.
Really?
And there's lots of rumours flying around, like that he, like Def Leppard and stuff like that he recorded string by string. Whether it's true.
Do you think that's plausible? I don't think that's practical, but...
No, but I remember, because he'd done some Bryan Adams stuff, and I watched some Bryan Adams videos, and he talked about how they were recording a song, I can't remember the song, and Mutt Lange said, right, go in there and do your vocals, which he did. He said, we're doing the chorus, so yeah, you're going to sing it 20 times. So Bryan Adams thought, 20? Bloody hell, and sung it 20 times, and then... when he come out, he said, yeah, that's the left side done. Now you've got to do 20 for the right side.
You know, well, I remember the one that stuck out for me was Dusty Springfield, who would record, the legend is that she would record a syllable at a time.
Yeah.
I've even seen the Pet Shop Boys when they were talking about it, because the song they did with her, where she went in, she went, Matt, and okay, start again, reel it back. So, fucking hell.
Well, I have heard that with Justin Bieber as well. He'll do word by word. But, you know, there's loads of rumours going around.
For sure, yeah.
You never know.
But it makes for fascinating, you know.
Oh, I think a lot of it is just the hype as well.
To create a sort of myth and a legend around these people.
So you've got Mutt Lange. He's one of my favourites. Done a lot of Nickelback stuff. I'm really into Nickelback production.
I was talking about somebody why Nickelback gets such a load of crap these days, because I always thought they were freaking awesome.
They write great songs.
They do, don't they? Yeah. Popular songs that do soundtracks for movies and get to number one and were in the mainstream at a time when basically rock bands were on the decline.
I wish I'd have wrote Rockstar or How You Remind Me.
How You Remind Me is a legendary track. Yeah.
So, Mutt Lange, he's like one of my go-tos. David Bendiff, who done the Paramore album, Riot.
Yeah.
That became a staple in engineer world of, man, that drum kit.
Because I remember the Bends by Radiohead being one that everyone said that's the one. The sound
who done that? I'm not sure who done that.
I think that was John Leckie. I'm not entirely sure, but that was one that was like sound on sound or my mates had Hi-Fi magazine, and they would test the hi-fis with the Bends
to see what it sounded like.
Yeah.
See, I always put the Paramore Riot album on, like Misery Business, because I know what that sounds like. So if I'm testing speakers or anything like that, I know.
That's what it is,
and that became a staple for everyone. Was chasing that snare sound.
Right.
So yeah, I spoke to David a few times on Instagram actually.
Is social media great for that? Can you imagine, like, back in the days before, like, I'm talking mid-90s or even before then and stuff like that, if you could look at your albums that we talk about, even Radiohead bands, and then get hold of that engineer back then, wet your pants, wouldn't you? It would be like, the moon. It would be amazing.
Crazy. So, yeah, you've got David Bendeth. Another one who produces some great stuff is Jason Perry from A.
Yes, yeah.
So me being a massive A fan when I was a kid, which was kind of done me in when obviously Mark emailed me to mix some of his tracks. I was just like, hang on a minute, man.
Never meet your heroes, but when you meet that guy, he is amazing. Lovely
it was
chap.
like he emailed me, and I was in Florida when he emailed me.
Oh yeah.
I was, God knows what the time difference was, but I remember.
A couple of drinks by the pool.
No, I woke up in the morning, and I was always the first one to wake up from the family.
Yeah.
Because they're knackered after all the parks, and I just checked my emails while everyone's still asleep, and it was like Mark Chapman. I was like, and he was like, I've got these ideas. God knows, I think he got my number through, or heard of me through, Andy Guyton, who does the guitars.
Yeah, he does excellent guitars.
He
made
made
this way as well, doesn't he? Yeah, he does the
guitars,
Brian Mays Red Special and stuff like that, doesn't he? Yeah.
Great.
My old guitarist from the Harpoon Blues Band has got number 9 of guitars that he made.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
He's a great Luther, and he's awesome at like servicing guitars. Yeah. So he's looked after my guitars, and I think he passed my number on to Mark or whatever. I never asked Mark, but so you got Jason Perry. He's done some great stuff, and one of the albums that just done me in was Matt Willis from Busted, and people might be listening to this.
There was a bloody Busted McFly. What's he mentioning these?
So I remember
because they get a reputation for being a boy band holding guitars, don't they?
Yeah, it's just like, well, Busted split up. Matt Willis done this solo album, and it's really poppy, but it's so bloody catchy, and the production is typical pop production. It just sounds the tits.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine said, Jason Perry produced that, and I was like, what, from A? He's like, yeah, and I was like, oh my god,
it's diversified.
That is one of my albums that I use for referencing.
Yeah.
So stuff like obviously the Paramore Right album, depending on what you don't use that for someone who's doing acoustic stuff, but
sure,
always use some for reference. As I've said before, Carl Bown, who does all like Bullet for My Valentine and stuff like that. What else stuff? Michael Jackson stuff. So Quincy Jones.
Oh, Quincy Jones. You see, now I was going to ask you that the questions are brewing as you're talking. Really are. So let's talk those classic engineers, producers. So Quincy Jones, George Martin, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you put any sway in George Martin's legendary status? It's all right if you don't. You don't have to.
But you've got to listen to Beatles on headphones because there's so much going on,
left and right, and how he put things so it doesn't all. Because I think a lot of albums it's kind of got to sound like everyone's sitting on the drum's lap, and I think kind of almost shy away from that left-right pattern. But for him, it was literally how the recording equipment worked, right? So it's you're in the room with the band then, aren't you? Because of the way the panning goes and stuff like that. So and who's the other one? Oh, the Wall of Noise. I've forgotten his name. Likes to shoot people.
Oh, Phil Spector.
Yes. Yeah. Would you have been so arsed off as there was that John Lennon had sent that Let It Be album off for Sparkling Up?
No. I mean, everyone's ears are different, aren't they?
Sure.
Again, some people, they come and work with me, and I'm not the right person to work on their stuff. Either I know, or they know.
Okay, well that's very mature. That's really quite kind of very professional way of looking at it as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you can't. You
say you can't, but people get awfully passionate about their music and kind of funny. So I think that's really professional. I think it's really kind of cool to say that this ain't kind of working here.
I've had a few people who are into rap ring me up, and and that's not my genre at all.
Sure.
And I wouldn't want to have a go at trying to do that because one, I'd probably balls it up, and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. So I'd be thinking, well, hang on, obviously I'm more of the rock, acoustic-y stuff. So, some people I've had in the studio and I've worked with, and I know myself that I'm not the right person for their sound.
Yeah.
And vice versa. They've come and they've done an album and they've gone somewhere else and had it done somewhere, or not that same album, but their next album, they've gone somewhere else.
But it sounds like the whole project of your studio is driven from your passion.
Oh yeah,
particular genre of music.
The studio is not. It's never been to make money, and I've said this to people. You know, I don't charge stupid prices, and because the whole aspect of the Blaze Studios when it started was never about.
Well, we go back to that first statement of when you walked in that studio and went to get you boys, out of there as quick as possible. We come back to that. So that was where the ethos of the whole studio started. And you've managed to keep that, you know, because I guess it must be tempting. Someone wants to go, well, I'll give you two, you know, I want to book you out for a month or something like that and produce my, I don't know, EDM. Yeah, rap album. You'd be like, well, mate.
Yeah, and I'll be like, look, to be honest, you know, it's not my thing, and I wouldn't want to take that on.
Sure.
One, I wouldn't want to take your money for doing that because that's not.
Well, I guess it then puts a pressure and opens a can of worms whereby you've then got to produce something that your heart's not in, you don't fully understand, and it's like you're doing it literally just to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
And, you know, fortunate, or I might say fortunate, you've engineered your position so that you don't have to.
No, that's right.
And that's the great thing about it. It's like when I take on gigs, if someone says to me, oh, do you want to play down a local? You know, it's 200 quid, it's good money. Well, I don't like that pub. And they only have covers bands in there, so they're not going to appreciate my, you know, blues, rock, original music, thanks, so I don't want to.
No, you don't.
And it's a great position to be in.
You don't want to be, because that kind of then just make you pissed off about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, resentfully strumming out the chords while four people are talking at the bar.
Yeah, you think, what are we doing, you know?
What are we doing here? But yeah. Well, I think, another one little question that pops up. I mean, I'm a secret country and western fan, especially country music, which is, as my research shows me, that it's probably the most popular genre on the bloody the bloody planet. I mean, you look at Spotify stats for country music listening, and then you know, the next genre down, which I guess would be pop or singer songwriter, and the distance between those two lines of statistics is vast.
Yeah,
like an absolute chasm. And you know, I got into like Luke Combs and Cassie Underwood and go like that, and the production, Nashville, Music City, there's a recording studio on it in every house, and it's that and the other. The production, when I listen to that album compared to, so take for example like a Luke Combs, what you see is what you get, and then listen to it straight afterwards, any of the modern bands I've been listening to, the production value, his is so upfront, like so big. And he's not playing any more instruments. Is it all in the production? Because it's just in that waveform being pushed to max.
It's just in there's lots of tricks.
Sure.
There's loads of tricks to get certain sounds that you either learn on the way, you hear maybe someone's done that, and you ask them. So, you know, I've asked some of my favourite, you know, engineers or producers.
Yeah.
And they've told me, I had a chat with Jason once, Jason Perry, when we was at an A gig, and he was telling me when he was in America recording an album and some of the tricks that he was doing, you know, and I was like, whoa, really? Yeah. You know, like, I was like, well, bloody hell, that's a bit strange to do that. But if you've got the time and you've got the studio for a month,
experimenting with it,
you can experiment. And then you know, sometimes things happen by accident. So, you know, or you stumble across something, you know, and you think, whoa. But I always find that I need to remember these tricks to use, because I'll think, whoa, this is a really good trick, but it doesn't suit what I'm working on now. I need that
for another time. Yeah,
and then that other time comes and you've forgotten about it. I could have put that trick in there.
You need yourself a little apprentice or something, don't you? Any of the kids looking interested in sound engineering?
I'm trying to train my son. Well, I'd like to. That's where the name Blaze Studios come from. See, it comes from my son.
Oh, his name's Blaze.
His name's Blaze.
Cool.
So he was kind of born when I moved and made my studio, and I was like, well, what am I going to call it?
What a lucky boy. Does he know? Lucky he is being brought to a recording studio. Oh my God.
So he's called Blaze, so I was like, right, I'm just going to call it Blaze Studios. You know, and hopefully, you know, when I'm too old and deaf, he can take over and that. But
do you do things to protect your hearing? I didn't notice if you had earplugs.
Yeah, I use in-ear monitors now, which has made a hell of a difference.
You're not a particularly loud band anyway and stuff like that.
That's made a hell of a difference. one, to at the end of a gig,
Yeah.
I can still hear people. So, and plus two, you can actually hear what you're doing at a gig now and hear everyone's mistakes.
Never used it.
I couldn't play without them.
Really?
Take a while to get used to.
Yeah.
So, me, the drummer, and the bass player, we all went up to Custom In-Ear Monitor's place in London way, I think.
Oh, wow.
And Paul, the guy there, he moulds your ears, send them away.
So they're right comfortable.
Yeah, he's got like a demo versions of all the models, so you can play them and see what they fit in your ear. They got like them in universal things. You go, oh, these ones a bit too toppy for me.
Tinny,
and then oh, these ones a bit too bassy. And you find the ones you like.
Yeah.
You know, and there where you go. But it is something you have to get used to.
Right.
So just kind of go with it. Don't put them in and think, oh, I can't do this.
Right.
And then once you've played with them, you won't
go back.
You won't go back.
Yeah, I do hate other loud musicians when I'm playing in a band. Yeah, especially being a harmonica player, just get drowned.
Totally.
And they just don't understand that if I go any louder, it'll feed back. Well, you'll all have to turn down. Well, I can't. We had a drummer that just was worried about his hearing, so instead of going to in-ear monitors, which sounds like a better solution, he would just get more and more heavy earplugs, to the point whereby they were practically noise cancelling.
So he'd hit as hard as possible.
Oh yeah, and he had no idea how loud he was hitting. Like, you literally, mate, are tearing the windows out, hitting the crap out of your kit, and none of us can be heard. Well, you'll have to turn up. I'm not putting these out and worried about my hearing and stuff like that. But if I could just ask you about the Greyhounds, have you always been in that band? Is that band there before you? Did you inherit it? Is it your band?
That's not my band.
Oh, wow.
It's the drummer's band.
Is it?
But he's. I used to watch them when we was in Raucous.
Did you?
We used to support them.
Because like, as the Floating Greyhounds, so everybody I speak to knows. No, Greyhounds are playing down so and so. Is your dad still getting you gigs?
No, but he gets the gigs. My dad comes to the gigs.
Sure.
But yeah, so that I stumbled on that by accident. So we were in Raucous. We were doing quite well. We were supporting the Greyhounds, or doing a double headliner at the.
I used to work with Miguel, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He was ad sales at Micropress Printers.
So he joined Raucous after me.
Oh, did he?
There was 4 of us in Raucous. There was me, Phil, Daryl, and Richard, or Paney, as everyone known him. Paney was the bass player. Daryl was the drummer. And Phil was the other guitarist, and I was guitar and singing. And that came about by accident.
Right.
So Daryl, the drummer, he wanted to be in a band. And I remember one day we were going to Norwich in my parents' car, and my dad said something about a band. And Daryl, he couldn't play drums. He said, I want to be a drummer.
That was that.
And I said to him, yeah, whatever, mate. Well, you learn the drums, knock on my door, and I'll be a guitar player. Probably about 3 weeks after that, I've had my first lesson.
Whoa!
And I was like, so we,
Had you been playing guitar at this point?
Yeah. I'd already been playing guitar. My dad made me learn guitar.
Did he?
Yeah, at 10.
You were like, forced music lessons.
Yeah, forced musically. My dad
Amazing.
said, we all have to do things in life that we don't like, and you'll learn guitar and you'll thank me later.
I love your dad. Do you know what? I wish I had that strength for my own kids. Honestly, as soon as I say to my daughter, do you want to learn the piano? No, starts crying.
Well, I used to cry.
Did you?
Yeah, because I'd done classical guitar.
There's a lot of it going about, because Sam Wilson said he was 8 when he was taken to his first drum lesson, and he cried as well.
Yeah. I remember my dad had booked me in for acoustic or classical guitar lessons.
Oh, wow. Well, that would make me cry, yeah.
Yeah, when you're 10, all you want to do is play, something that everyone knows.
From the age of, I begged my parents for a guitar from the age of about 5. I begged them, and it's a week's wages. It's a week's wages, and then it was, well, if we buy you one, you won't learn to play it, and that'll be a pissing waste of money.
Yep.
So anyone who's heard this podcast, I heard my boring, bloody, I was a poor boy shit story before. But Dad was real support even then, forced you into it. So you classically trained on this thing then?
Yeah. So I had lessons.
That would explain a lot.
With a guy called Richard Wiley in Galston.
I know of Richard, yeah.
Who's the tits?
A friend of mine I was in a folk band with a guy called Ben, and he was trained by him, and he was incredible.
Oh, Richard Wiley, shit hot guitar player, but when you're 10, you don't care. You don't understand that until you get older, how good someone was at doing what he did.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum saying that, he don't want to go to guitar lessons anymore. He hates going. My mum used to bribe me with McDonald's. She said, on the way to guitar lessons, we'll have a McDonald's. And my dad just said to me, we all do things in life we don't want to do, and he's learning the guitar, and he'll thank me one day. Which obviously
Right, I'm going downstairs after this podcast and telling my daughter that she definitely needs to learn to play the guitar there. So I bought her a small scale electric guitar and everything. She's got an electric guitar, keyboards. Obviously, you can see all the harmonicas that are laying around bloody everywhere. So yeah, mate, that's a good philosophy.
So that was that, and then I hated it. And my dad said, "Look, when you get grade 3 classical guitar, I'll let you have rock guitar lessons as well." So I had rock guitar lessons with a guy called Ian Dybel from Yarmouth.
Yeah, I know of Ian. Yeah. I don't know if I've
met, taught quite a lot of people.
Probably stumbled across him at a few gigs, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, after he was in the glam rockers and stuff like that.
Yeah, the glam rockers ruled Yarmouth back in the day.
So he taught me rock guitar, done all the grades there, and that was just how that happened. So then Daryl turned up on the door and said he'd had his first drum lesson. So we done that. Then he knew Phil and Painey from school and said, well, they can play guitar and bass. So my dad was like, yeah, you can rehearse in the garage. Happy days. But we didn't have a singer.
All right.
And we had a friend.
You have a good-looking mate.
Well, this is where it happened. So
I got a good-looking mate. He can be a band. Yeah.
We all had this mate who was like quite in with all the women.
And
we said, do you want to be... he was into the Doors and doing all that. He was a bit, and we said, do you want to be in the band? And he was like, nah. So I was like, well, we can't just keep playing songs, without any singing because it's bloody boring. So they kind of said, well, you can sing a bit, Raoul. Why don't you sing until we find someone? Just for rehearsals.
Famous last words, isn't it? Yeah.
And then obviously we never found anyone. I ended up doing it. And then we gigged, got supported the Greyhounds, and then the Greyhounds, they kind of the singer had kind of had enough, and I remember Buddy ringing me up and saying, look, we still want a gig, but our singer's kind of not doing it anymore, but we need someone to stand in. So I was standing in with someone else. So when I wasn't gigging in Raucous, I'd go do the Greyhounds gigs, and when the ones I couldn't do, this other chap would do. And Raucous started like having, the drummer's nanny died and left him some money. He wanted to go to Drum Tech in London. And it kind of started slowly falling apart. Well,
you're going from being young men to being young adults, and life happens, as we all know, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I remember Buddy saying to me, do you want to join the Greyhounds? And I was like, yeah. But they had another guitarist as well, see. So I was just singing, not guitaring.
Oh wow!
And then, he said, "What would you do if Carlos didn't turn up one day at a gig? Would you be able to sing and play?" And I was like, "Well, I know some of the songs you do, and some of them I can sing and play, and some of them might be a bit. But I think we could blag our way through a gig."
Yeah.
And the next thing, we played at Alan's in Yarmouth, and Carlos didn't turn up.
Oh.
He'd gone to see Meatloaf, I think.
Well, that's a fair excuse. I'll let him off now. That's a good show.
So we done the gig and got through it, and then that was it. Carlos got sacked, and we ended up, we were a 4-piece, and then the keyboard player left, and we were a 3-piece, and then I've just been...
Been doing it ever since?
Yeah, doing it ever since. It's just second nature.
So have you taken over the promo now and stuff like that? Or do you say Buddy did that?
He does all that. We say it's not my department. So
this is good. I was going to say, a working band like that, because I've had old Lee Chapman here from the Invisible Band and Austin Beats. And that has to work in a professional manner with jobs divided up and stuff like that.
Well, Buddy does all the gigs. Does that. I do setting up the PA and the sound, obviously.
Sure.
And anything technical. The bass player does the lights.
Yeah.
And everything like that, and anything like soldering or anything taking something apart.
He's
pretty good at that. So, and if something happens, like we were deciding to put our lights somewhere else the other day, but I said that's not my department. And he'll do the same thing. Like if someone says something about, the bass drum's not working, and say, that's not my department. So,
well, it's worked for a long while. How long have you been in the format you're at?
17 years, I think.
Wow, so it is well. Like I say, you got gigs coming out of your arse.
Yeah.
So what you got coming up gig wise then?
Lots of weddings that have been postponed from COVID.
Oh wow! Okay.
Obviously, we're meant to be pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And then obviously people had to cancel them, so they're all
now stacking out and stuff like that. Wow!
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because they're nice payers, the weddings, eh?
Yeah, it's just main focus is getting this studio up and running.
Well, fingers crossed for August, mate. I mean, I'm hoping, I'm going to try and drag Danny R down there. I don't think it'll take much dragging.
No.
He loves your work. We've still got an EP recorded that you mixed and mastered for, so we're going to release soon as well.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, we think back to coming down and just like booking you around, just sitting around and doing an album and new stuff.
Well, I've got this thing in my head that all the people who have kind of supported me through the early Blaze Studios are going to get an invite to record for free.
Oh, stop giving it away, Raoul.
But there's going to be some teething problems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can't charge people
for
money.
You to test your gear.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Well, you can, because I know it's going to be. The thing is, with a reputation being what it is, I trust you to run what I've got here, which is a Scarlett 202 and a MacBook.
So it's going to be like that. Look, Sons of Mark were in the other week, and they're desperate to be the first ones in the new studio. Glenn's already said that. He was like, we want to be the first. And I was like, well, you were the first band in the original Blaze Studio, so when it's open, you will be there. Mm-hmm. And obviously all the people who have used the old Blaze Studios will get the same rate, because rates are going to go up.
Well, it's got to pay for somehow.
But another thing that I do, which is I think different to a lot of studios, charge by the hour or by day. I charge by the song.
Do you really?
Yes.
So how does that work out if I've got a 6-piece and I want to record like maybe 3 songs and I start to, send me the mix? Or do you send the mix out, or do you have the band sit in on the mix as well?
No, that's a good one, because
because you could be like, I've sat there like with a band and they've gone, I think the snare drum's a bit this, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, and it's probably the drummer who says that.
Engineer getting redder and redder.
Yeah, so it's normally, the bass guitar's too loud, and you think, who said that? Oh, it's the bassist. It's not the bassist, do you know what I mean? Or, the guitar's too loud, and you turn around, it's the guitarist. It's not the guitarist, do you know what I mean? So everything, if it's too loud, as someone, that's not that person's instrument, and if it's too quiet, it's the person's instrument who's saying it.
Vocals are low, says the vocalist.
Yeah, exactly. So, I charge by the song, and obviously the more songs you do, the cheaper it is. So if you come in the studio and record one song, I don't mean hassle, but for me to set up all the studio and get it all right and mix one track is more time consuming, really.
We talked about this before. We went down to, there was a place in, I don't know if you remember it, sort of, what was it, Rock Lobster or something like that in South Wales, Fat Studios, that was it, and half a day set up the drum kit and stuff. It's like I sat there as the singer, I didn't actually do anything until
the next day,
halfway through the next day. Where basically it was all on me then, and I sang solid for 4 hours.
So I wouldn't expect a singer to do that.
Do they get infinite mixes and infinite time studio then until they're right with it, or is there a point, or is that not happened yet?
The person, the band, or the musician has got to be happy, because there's no point.
Sure.
And they will get revisions and revisions, and like I normally say to you, your mixes are there. Have a listen. Let me know any changes.
I think in 3 albums, which is 36 odd tracks, I think there's only been twice, and one I think I forgot to send you a stream.
Yeah.
Oh, the harmonica was me. Oh, I didn't send you that.
Yeah. So, I charge by the song, because if I'm working with a band, I'd rather work with a band that does 12 songs than 2.
Right.
Because one, it's more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And they can get more out of it as well. And I try and keep the price down. Again, because I don't want these youngsters who have great songs, but they don't get to showcase it.
You don't want them putting out that rough CD that the bartender goes, listening to that, that's recorded in a sock.
Exactly. So it's all down to, it's got to sound good.
Well, it's keeping the ethos of why you started in the first place, which is sometimes, I think, for a lot of people that start projects, difficult to remember, difficult to hold on to. But it sounds to me like for you, it's not. It's almost like in everything that you're doing, that ethos of, well, I'm not here to get you out as quickly as possible.
No.
So you want to help. You have a passion for that genre and that music that what makes it sound good.
Yeah. It is to do with the passion. I mean, just going back to the Sons of Mark's lads. They literally, they'll message me like they did the other day. They've got a couple of ideas, so they haven't got the whole song done. They've just got these ideas,
You're that far involved with them now. You're like a band member, mate. Yeah,
I certainly am. And I said to them, they say like, we want to book in for a day, and I was like, yeah, shoot me some dates. What's free with you, and then we can find out, what suits everyone. And they come over, wrote some lyrics in the van on the way over. The singer has, and they just write great songs. And this is another thing that this has got to be said, because anyone who comes in the studio has got to really. When they first came, you could tell they had like what they call the red light fever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I totally do. Red light goes on to record. All of a sudden, your fingers won't play the bloody chords. You've forgotten the words.
Yeah.
And it all goes to shit.
And they weren't. I don't think they'd done much recording, so they weren't really used to the process of just playing guitar on its own, and then adding the vocals,
Right.
then adding anything else. Or if you make a mistake, we can just punch you in at a certain bit.
Yep, drop-ins. Yeah.
Where now, they're like telling me what to do. They know how to run it because they've recorded with me.
Take it back to the first verse, drop me in on the second bit, I'll go in, bosh.
So I'm like, right, well, they come with the tempos already sorted. Do you know what I mean? We get the click track.
Blimey.
And they know what they're doing.
So it's been a real progression for them as well, learning curve.
I mean,
like you're dealing with the same crap over and over again. They become better every time.
They're super studio experienced. Do that's why they can smash out a song in 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
They've got, and what they'll do is they'll have these ideas, like they'll record them, and then they'll just say, "Do your magic" to me, and I'm like, "What?" And obviously in the early days, they're like, "What do you want me to do? Do what you want. You know what we want to sound like."
Yeah.
And they just let me do whatever, delays and everything, and put strings in, and put drums in, and put bass in, and I'd then send them the mix, and they'd be like, "Whoa, we really like that. What you've done there is really good."
Yeah.
And I always say to them, don't feel just because it's there and I've done it, you have to say it's there. You can just say, actually, you don't like that.
Yeah, I didn't want that. Yeah, I did that with them. It's very, I don't know, it's kind of, for me, it's kind of terrifying because I've done some quite decent collaborations since I've had this little home studio set up, especially playing harmonica on bits. And because I do play a little bit of guitar, a little bit of bass and stuff, and, been adding some stuff. Someone said, oh, you play bass, will you stick bass on that? And I put bass on a track the other week and then was terrified. And it was said to them, please, if you don't like it, I shall not be offended if you don't get a real bass player to put that on there, and not one bit, because I want it to be right for you. But at the same time, I was so over the moon to be involved in such a great song and being able to put my touch to it as well.
I think you can't be too precious about your bits, especially if you're adding something on. I don't get offended if someone says, actually, what you've done there is we don't like it.
Yeah.
Or we don't like the delay you've put there.
Well, I think it took me a long time as a musician, especially I started as a kid and a fairly sensitive kid, to separate that they weren't thinking I was a twat. They just didn't like. They didn't like the bit that I played. And I took it so personally that, I can't play. I'm an arse. I fucked it up. I've done this and everyone would just like, oh God, that's it. And then be so desperate to be on people's albums and be involved musically that when I'm not, I've missed my chance. I've missed a bit. They're going to go somewhere, and I had the chance to be part of it someday, and now I'm not. But I overthink everything to the fucking nth degree.
Yeah, I think.
But I let that go a lot as I've become an adult. So
I know if someone writes a song that is their song, but I think someone who, like that thing about the guitar's not loud enough, and you turn around and it's the guitarist who said it. I think this is where big bands, obviously, they get a producer in. Because he's stepped away from the song,
right?
So he's listening as a listener.
Yeah, subjective, isn't it?
The band are listening for their little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Their personal touch that's going to get them noticed. That's going to someone say, "Whoo, that boy can really play."
So I think
instead of what the song needs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way that I try to be that person when someone comes in the studio, because I listen to it as a song.
Right.
Case of that is I had some lads in from Bury St Edmunds.
You're getting far and wide, mate. Bury St Edmunds is far.
So they stumbled across me because another band out that way had recorded with me, and they'd liked or heard their CD and was like, whoa. And then actually this band from Bury had gone somewhere else. And they'd paid ridiculous amounts of money. Yeah,
they can. Can't you, though? You really can. I mean, I'm talking to, there's a band on the same record label as me, Ryder, and they paid 10 grand for like 2 tracks being recorded in
But
perhaps
it's
in
all
America.
right if it sounds 10 grand's worth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You don't
Yeah,
mind.
yeah.
And I remember them. They came to me and I said, "All right, lads, I'd never met any of them before. They'd been recommended like the stuff." And I said, "Oh, have you done?" You know, I always like to ask people if they've done any recording before, because if they have, they're used to how it works and how to get all.
You don't want to be kind of condescending to go right.
No.
Yes, then it. And if they already go, all right, mate, I bloody know.
Yeah, or we're now doing the vocals, or can your headphones, can you hear on your headphones okay, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Where some people have never been in there, they don't really know the ethos of how it works.
And they might think that that's the volume I'm getting in my headphones.
Yeah.
And I remember those days.
Yeah,
well, is this it? Is this how it's supposed to sound?
Yeah. You daren't say, "Oh, can you turn it up?" Because you think, well, it must be the right level. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And I said, "Oh," and they said, "Yeah. The songs we recorded somewhere else." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Oh, right. What are you recording them again?" I said, "With different members or no?" We just don't like the sound of them. So I said to them, "Well, can I hear it?" And they obviously loaded it up on their phone. And it was one of them, "Oh, that sounds shite, turn it off." But the band sounded good. So I could hear that the band had potential, but the band all the songs didn't sound as good as they should do. And I just said to them, how much did you pay for that?
Oh, God.
And they were like $2,000. And these were youngsters who obviously...
thought that that's what you pay, because you hear all sorts of stories, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, about how much people pay for a recording studio in a day. Recording studio in London, $2,000 a day. Which back when I was a kid, it's got to be. Really? Does
and I thought, wow, man, these lads recorded 4 songs for $2,000, and I knew in my head I could, if they'd have paid me $2,000, it would have sounded better than that. So I just couldn't get it into my head that someone had done that.
Right. So you think someone had ripped them off, and it's that sort of the ethical question of it went round.
Yeah. So they then obviously recorded these new songs, and I remember when I was mixing them, I was going back to their other mixes just to hear the difference.
We said I remember there's a documentary about Monmouth Valley Studios going about somewhere. I can't remember. It's on the famous one down in Wales where Stone Roses and Black Sabbath and Oasis very famously thing. They recorded that there, and they brought in their own engineer who'd been doing a live set. And I don't know if you've seen this, but they recorded the whole album and then had this guy mix it. And it kind of sounded all right. It sounded like a live band in a pub. And then they put another, and the difference, the shine on it, the whole upfront aggression of the first Oasis album that we know. It was so different. If I'd have heard one by itself, I'd have gone, But then you hear that when you go, fucking hell.
Well, see, live sound and studio sound is another totally different thing.
So because you'd started off doing live stuff, bands and stuff. But I think it sounds to me like from doing live recordings, you've managed to make the transition.
So obviously, when we'd done the live recordings years and years ago, people wanted it to still sound live, so you had to keep that rawness.
Yeah.
So you didn't try and polish it too much. And then obviously studio stuff. Well, I say that, but some bands come in and they want that raw sound.
Yeah.
So, I always when a band comes in, I always chat to them. I try and make them feel as comfortable as possible, because I don't think there's anything worse than being in a studio and playing your part and feeling as though there's some, I don't know, that you can't play your bit.
Yeah, like you're being judged.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what goes through my head. I walk into a studio with an unknown engineer or producer, and I go, this guy must have seen. And you look around, there's instruments and like signed albums on a wall, and you think, oh God, there's one in Denmark. I did some session work in Denmark, underground studio in Denmark Street for Acid Jazz Records when I was about 15. And there was like gold discs on the wall, and the engineer sat there and he's like, all right, mate, whenever. I was like, oh, fucking hell.
Yeah.
He's seen it all. Whatever I play is definitely going to be shit.
That's right. And then you're not going to get the best out of a musician, which then makes...
for a bad recording.
So you want it to be... So I always chat to them first, make them feel welcome. I always tell them, play. Even if you make a mistake, just still play.
Yeah.
Because it might just be that one little bit. The rest of the take might be the tits.
Yeah.
And you've just glitched that one note.
So you can
and we can fix that.
Yeah, from the next chorus.
So I tell everyone, everything's fixable. obviously when singers come, I always tell them I can help them with pitch by fixing them using software, but I can't add in emotion. So I would rather you sing slightly sharp and flat.
That's an intuitive thing to say, but mean it. Wow, yeah, I've never heard an engineer say that.
You know, sing with meaning. Because there's no plug-in that I know of, or no hardware that go, oh, press the sing it with bollocks button. Do you know what I mean? Or,
I think that could apply to mostly any instrument, but specifically with singing, you can't. Yeah, and that is most prevalent with those as well, isn't it? You know,
where I've had vocalists come in and they've sung their line, and I'm like, wow, man, that's awesome. But that bit in the middle, you were just flat. But I don't want you to sing it again because you're not going to get that passion that you had in it. You're now going to overthink it, overcompensate it. Yeah. It's easier for me just to fix it, and no one will know.
Blimey.
So, and I also, another thing I do is when we do vocal tuning, I always ask a band if they have a problem with that. So, because there's nothing worse than spending 2-3 hours. Everyone's heard of auto-tune. Yeah. Well, that's a load of bollocks. There's no such thing as auto-tune because it only drags it to the closest note you're singing. So if you're quite a good singer, and you sing quite close, you know, it's going to be working hardly at all.
So it won't actually switch it to the correct note if you're singing.
No, it will only pull it. It will only pull it to the note that you're closest to.
Okay, right.
So people always think, oh yeah, just chuck auto-tune on. No, I use one called Melodyne, which is it's the same kind of program but different manufacturer.
Because I think people think that it just took away talent. Oh, you don't need to be talented anymore. You don't need to sing. Just whack a load of auto-tune on, load of compression, and anybody can sing once they're in a studio, kind of thing.
No. No, it is. You know, if you're singing all over the show, you know that can take some time to tune up. Yeah. You know, because you do it note for note. So there's nothing worse than spending
so you don't just like select the whole waveform and go auto, you know, just 90% auto tune, 50% auto tune. So you do it. You pick out the note that's wrong and try and correct that one.
So I would go through the whole of the vocal take.
That is a lengthy process, Jesus. See, vocalists as well, and I get it for the harmonica too, and it's not always fixable. I've noticed with compression, which is where your magic comes in, swaying away to and from the microphone and stuff like that. Not always fixable with compression. I noticed because God damn it, I've tried.
Yeah, and also, but that comes with studio experience. So you know, when you get someone who's never done it before, they just sing, right close to the mic or right far away. Yeah. Really quiet. I remember
or sound check really quietly and then belt it out as soon as you press record.
Yeah.
I have heard a good one because a track recorder, a guitarist friend of mine, who's only ever sung live and on an SM58 right up against his nose. Right, so when I got him in front of a condenser microphone in the studio, I heard a trick whereby you put an SM58 that pokes over,
right, so
that then he can't actually get any closer. Can't get his nose on the condenser. He's got it on the SM58, so that's his thing.
But sometimes that's a comfort thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
so that's how they like to sing. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of some other tricks that I've done, and just to get people through the sessions. Yeah. To make them feel comfortable. I remember I had a guy in once, and he said he couldn't sing without playing the guitar.
Oh right, yeah.
So what he'd done is I gave him a guitar with no strings on, so he could hold it and do all this and sing, and it did work because when he was singing without the guitar, his vocals wasn't as good as when he was.
He's actually strumming it, thinking he was playing a guitar.
So again, that's just one of them. There's loads of tricks and that you can use and just finding the right one for the right job.
I mean it's a fairly measured environment, and these are stuff that you need to do to get stuff done, because I think the misconception is that I do it live and you just do the same thing in front of a microphone and that'll be lovely, but it kind of doesn't, and you think, I remember putting myself in front of a condenser mic the first time in just a bare room and thinking, why doesn't it sound like it does in my ears? Why doesn't it sound like when I play live in the PA in the pub, because it's a controlled environment and you need to start doing things dead in your room and, taking that, the minus 200 hertz rule and stuff like that from anything that isn't bass or bass drums and stuff like that.
The room plays a massive part. So
I didn't realise quite how much.
No, so the new studio is going to be designed, it's been designed totally flat.
Wow.
So obviously Paul, the designer, has said, he's already told me that my speakers I've got, you're going to hear totally different than I've ever heard them before.
Yeah.
So he's like,
Wow.
you wait, you haven't heard your Adam speakers.
You start going back through all your mixes and going, oh my god.
Yeah.
No, I don't that you will. But Raoul, look, mate, I usually do an hour. We're an hour and a half, mate.
Well,
This
hey.
is fascinating. So yeah, you're gonna have to come back and tell us more another time, I think.
Yeah, when it's built.
When it's built.
Yeah, we'll have to tell you how it's going.
Perhaps I'll do a live, like take my little setup and interview you in there, and perhaps get a couple of pods, get them sons of Mark in, and get them to talk about what they're doing, being the first guys in the new studio. That'd be an exciting little cast. I don't want to make that one. I want to listen to that one.
Yeah, so do I. I know there's going to be some teething problems.
Sure.
Obviously, it's going to be same equipment, but there's going to be some teething problems. But you know,
yeah, it'll be awesome because it's you. Thanks for everything that you do, and thanks for coming over today.
Thanks
Raoul,
for inviting me.
your
It's
time,
been
mate.
a pleasure. We got there in the end.
We totally did, and we'll get there again, buddy. You take it easy, and I'll put a little link down in the description here of Blaze Studios where they can have a look at what you do and listen to some samples of stuff you recorded.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Excellent.
All
Thank
right,
you.
mate. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.